Okay, let's get into this. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to BWTM Sports Gaming. We are doing the Chris Eubank versus Liam Williams post-fight review. So I've just been on Ultratech. So shout out to Ultratech, was on his show doing a post-fight show. So now I'm here on BWTM Sports doing a post-fight show as well. So let's get into this. I haven't watched all the build-up to this fight. The gloves are off, all the things that Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams were saying with one another. It was advertised as a grudge match, and I expect to see plenty of fireworks and punches being thrown and it to get ugly. I expected to see those things. I expected to see Liam Williams giving his all, throwing punches, and crowding Eubank and not allowing Eubank to get into any sort of rhythm. I expected Eubank to engage with Williams, but having the faster hands and probably the better work rate. I expected Eubank to be the stronger of the two middleweights, being naturally big of middleweight. I also expected Eubank to dominate the fight. And I didn't expect much from Liam Williams, to be fair. But I expected him to come forward, be a come-forward fighter, hands up and give his all, be brave. But I expected Eubank to be too much, and because he's fought at a higher level or fought with better opposition consistently, I thought he would have just overpowered Liam Williams. What we did see in the fight, or what I saw in the fight, personally, was that Eubank Jr. dropped Liam Williams in the first round. Beautiful jab. And he dropped him again and again. But I didn't see any killer instinct from Eubank Jr. I didn't see, for a guy that said he wanted to hurt Liam Williams, a guy that said they wanted to punish Liam Williams, a guy that wanted to put Liam Williams in his place, I didn't see a lot of that killer instinct from Eubank Jr. The Eubank Jr. of old, back in the day, probably would have stopped Liam Williams and probably would have made it more of an entertaining fight. This Eubank Jr. seemed pretty much safety first, was happy to do his work early, dropped Liam Williams, said, right, I've dropped you enough times. If I catch you with a shot coming in, fine. If I catch you with an uppercut, fine. If I catch you with overhand right, fine. But otherwise, I'm going to box my way to a points decision. That's what it seemed to me. Now, I know a lot of people have been heavily criticizing Eubank Jr. for his performance tonight. Now, there's two ways you can look at this. Eubank Jr. was criticized in the past for not listening to his trainer, for doing his own thing, for at one point he told one trainer to shut up in the corner. So now he was fighting on his own steam. Now, if it is true that Roy Jones gave him those instructions and he was boxing to the instructions of Roy Jones, he's listening to his trainer. So Eubank is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Because if the instructions of Roy Jones Jr. is box, 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 pick him off, use the jab. I don't want you engaging with this guy. I want it to be a clean victory. I want you to show me you can box the 12 rounds. I want you to show me movement for this fight. I want you to show me movement, a lateral movement, something we've never seen Eubank do. Show lateral movement, and it's like people look at this fight and say, "Oh, he's no world champion." But I have to say to people this: I remember the times where, you'd have a guy fight from, you fight your British, your Commonwealth, your European, and then you get your world title. Along the way, you'd have a situation where the fighter would get challenged or he'd come up against opposition. And, until he got to that world title shot, and then he became world champion. For me, I think you have to look at the Chris Eubank Jr. story now as a puzzle that's being thrown up in the air and all the pieces scattered around the place, and you start to put it together piece by piece. That's how I see Chris Eubank Jr. now in 2022. I expected tonight to see Eubank Jr. put it together and destroy Liam Williams. But is that what Roy Jones Jr. wanted for Chris Eubank Jr.? Because if that's not what Chris Eubank, if the plan for Roy Jones was to see Eubank Jr. do 12 rounds and to do for Eubank just to box Liam Williams and to, drop him but not knock him out. If that was the plan, to go 12 rounds, to show lateral movement for 12 rounds, to show he could do it, then well done, Chris. Because he looked absolutely exhausted. I don't know. I've never seen a Chris Eubank Jr. fight where he seemed so exhausted. So it's either one of two things now with Chris Eubank Jr. One of the guys on the show, Daryl, shout out to Daryl, by the way, on Ultra Tech Show, said that he thinks Eubank Jr. is in it for the payday now, and his heart's not really in boxing anymore. Maybe so, but also take into consideration the grief of him losing his brother. That is something that we need to take into consideration. And he's boxing through that. And grief hits different people in different ways. So you can't quantify how grief affects a fighter. And the other thing is that, the effects of Roy Jones Jr. People look at Roy Jones Jr. and remember how skillful a fighter Roy Jones Jr. was, but his mental approach to the fight game, what Roy is educating Eubank in, in coaching, it's not so much about changing a fighter. It's about adding to what that fighter does and polishing them up. When you try to completely change someone in coaching, rather than work to their strengths, that can be dangerous. And so I think what Roy's doing is not trying to change Eubank, but to add to what Eubank can do. So we know Eubank has got a great engine. We know Eubank takes a great shot. We know Eubank's got lots of heart. We know Eubank throws combinations. We know he does all those things. We know he can do all those things. But tonight we saw something different with Eubank. We saw him actually try to box and actually try to use the ring. And people might be critical of that, right? But it's like the whole Deontay Wilder thing, right? It's like people like to put you in boxes and keep you in boxing. They like to keep in a box. So like, if you're a guy that just comes in throwing hooks all the time, people say, oh, he's only a hooker. He don't know what a jab is. So when you start to come out and use the jab, start throwing hooks and start saying to you, yeah, he's not as exciting as he used to be. So you can never please everybody in boxing. So I think Eubank Jr. may have just got to the point where he said, you know what? I'm going to please myself. I'm going to do what's best for me because, you know what? I'm not appreciated. I'm going to do what's best for me and what's best for my career and what's best for me. Simon Jordan said he didn't see two world champions in there, but I never knew Simon Jordan was from TalkSport. I never knew he was a boxing expert. I don't know where Simon Jordan got all his boxing expertise from, but I think it's very easy to jump on somebody and hate on somebody, but Eubank Jr. and Roy Jones Jr. will ultimately be judged in that world title fight. That's where they'll be judged, and that's where I will leave judgment to. And as I said in Ultra Show, if it's Gennady Golovkin as the opponent, then what do you need against Gennady Golovkin? Plenty of movement. Now let's put this together. If Roy and Chris can put together a game plan of fast combination punching with good movement in and out with Golovkin and look to outpoint Golovkin, out of the four world champions, out of the four guys, Golovkin is the one who, for me, is the most vulnerable. All the other guys are technically good. Yes, Golovkin's He's slow and methodical, and he's a puncher, yes. But who has Golovkin knocked out who is legitimately world class? I ask people this question over and over again. For all the knockouts Golovkin's had, who is he genuinely knocked out? He could knock out Kell Brook, who was a blown up welterweight and moved up to middleweight, right? And Kell Brook had his success against Golovkin. Let's not forget that as well. So Golovkin's not unbeatable, and certainly at the age he is now, he hasn't fought in ages. Golovkin is the most out of the four, Cholo, Munguia, GGG. Who's the other guy? I forgot somebody else, but out of the four of those guys, I think that, GGG is the guy. He's the man that I would be targeting, and for good reason. I think the other guys are young, they're fresh, they're active. GGG isn't. So I would pick Eubank Jr. now, and I would be telling him, listen, it's that movement we will need against Golovkin. And as Golovkin comes in through 3-4 punches and a white spin away. It's the way Kell Brook started and fought against Golovkin. He was fine, but then he got greedy. He stood in the pocket with Golovkin. When you stand in the pocket with Golovkin, there's only one winner there. But Brook did the right thing. Throw your shots and get away. Throw your shots and get away. If Eubank can put a combination together, a quick combination together, and spin out and get away from Golovkin, if he can do that for 12 rounds and not pull his chin up in the air and pull it back, because that's my concern. Golovkin has a leaping left hook. He has his left hook. He can drop back and throw this left hook. And that left hook, I wouldn't want Eubank being caught on the edge of his chin going back. That's the one thing I don't like about Eubank. When he's against the ropes, he'll pull straight back. And I can see Eubank being on one of those knockout reels of him getting knocked out, because the way he stands, he leans back. That left hook of Golovkin could catch him clean. The way he boxes now concerns me, because the low left hand, the low right hand, he's all here. On what you can do in old school style is you go to the left hand, you bring the left hand down. So you bring it down with this hand and you throw the right hand over the top. And that's something that someone like a Golovkin will do. So I have got some serious concerns about Eubank's setup. This setup here, I'm concerned about it. He looks like a knockout waiting to happen. And I really hope that's not the case, because I really do like Junior. I really do like him. But the way he's set up concerns me. It does concern me. I'm pushing him in for this whole fight with Golovkin, because I think out of the champions, he's the one that the most beatable out of all of them. And why I say beatable, because of the styles. So that's what I'm looking at. I just don't like Eubank's hands being low. Like I said, he looks like he's setting himself up to be knocked out. As for Liam Williams, got knocked down 4 times or 3 times. He just wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough. And it was never a 50-50 fight. The fight was never, ever a 50-50 fight. But Sky liked to say 50-50. So, if you say it isn't a 50-50 fight, then why would you pay to watch the fight? It was never a 50-50 fight, but it is what it is. Right. People are saying, Eubank is not world level. Basics are real poor. No killer instinct. Okay. Eubank Jr. was trying to be like Roy Jones. Well, that's what happens when you're getting trained by your idol. Good evening. I hope you're well. I'm good, Joe. Good to see you in the house. Eubank is treating to improve boxing IQ versus Lee Williams. Yep. Eubank has improved. The movement was good. Spot on about Grief Ingram. Look at Anthony Yard. He's been grieving leading up to his first Arthur fight, and look how much better he looked after a year on. Yeah, he did look a different fighter, to be fair. Let's see who gets down here. I can't see Eubank versus GG happening at all, to be fair. Eubank won't go on design if he's signed with Sky. No chance. Okay. I hate talking about the politics and the business. Yeah, they must have a plan there because I mean, surely they keep talking about this GGG thing over and over again. So there must be some plan with Ben Shalom and not Ben Shalom with what's his name? What's the guy's name? I can see the guys now. I see him now. I can see the two guys now, the two brothers, Sauerland brothers. Definitely the Sauerland brothers. They won't be putting this stuff out about GGG all the time. The fight couldn't be made. So I think the fight can be made. Peace and blessings to you, Ingram, in the chat. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the GGG fight can be made because I don't see why they would talk about it otherwise. If the GGG fight is not in the Roy Jones eyesight and it's not the plan, it's not part of the puzzle, then it wasn't. It was a piss poor performance from Chris Eubank Jr. If GGG is not in their sight, if that's not the next fight, that's not what they're looking to target. It's piss poor, But the thing is, you can't. The most dangerous thing to do in boxing is to try and do something you've never done before and try it in a world title fight. Tonight, Eubank Jr. would have learned lateral movement for 12 rounds. He would never have done lateral movement for 12 rounds in a fight. It's the first time he's done it, and he looked absolutely exhausted afterwards. Now he goes back to the gym with new information uploaded. He knows now, when I go back in the gym, damn, for me to fight at that pace for 12 rounds, I need to be not just this fit. I need to be this fit and more. And he wasn't catching Liam Williams with as much punches as he probably would have liked. So he needs to be more accurate with his punches. The output of punches wasn't that great either. So these are things that they will have to go back in the gym and work on. Roy Jones has a plan, I'm sure. And let's hope that plan leads to Gennady Golovkin. I think that's about it for me. I don't really want to go on too much more about it because there isn't much to go on about. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you all so much, as always, for watching BWTN Sports. Appreciate you all. And I'll be back in a moment to do another video. Much love. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, like, and share the video. I'm out.